Well, and Revis, what about the threat of nuclear war? How did that, because that's something that people who grew up, especially children of the Cold War era, usually have some memories associated with that fear.
I know a lot of the really big nuclear fears predated my time as a young person who started having awareness of the world around them. Now, I was probably maybe 2 or 3 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And at that time, again, we were living in Bossier City. And if there had been a missile attack, and I saw these maps later, Bossier would have been one of the first places hit by Soviet missiles coming out of Cuba. But, I'm 2, 3 years old. I just wanted to play with my toys. But as far, and to be honest, I don't know if we, at least my generation, or at least the large part of my generation, by the time we got into the 60s and Vietnam was done, and you started having, the negotiations for the nuclear arms control treaties, the SALT treaty under Nixon and Ford, and then Carter tried to negotiate SALT II. Of course, it never could get through the Senate. But the fact that it seemed as though both powers, they had all these vast arsenals of nuclear weapons, and it seemed like they were just doing their dead level best not to have to use them. It became, I think, was less and less of a fear for those I lived around. What we really started fearing was, hey, are we going to have a draft in 1979 and we going to have to go fight in Iran during the hostage crisis? We were probably more concerned about those kind of events and probably progressively less concerned about the nuclear umbrella.
Well, and you've touched upon presidents. You've mentioned Nixon, Ford, Reagan. Is there a particular one when you think of the Cold War and your experiences growing up that really stands out to you?
Reagan.
Okay. And why is that?
Well, and there are some who would argue this, but I will maintain for the rest of my life that it was Reagan policies. Yes, you can make the argument that we literally spent the Soviet Union into oblivion, and that's probably true. We were able to absorb it. They couldn't. And Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet president, freely admitted that. He was honest about it. But Reagan, and he had spoken on this for years, even before he became president, that he made the only way that either the Soviet Union was going to be held at bay or put on the ash heap of history, as he called it, was to recognize that we had to be militarily more in a state of preparedness than they were. To be honest, at that time, even as good as our intelligence was, we were not 100% certain, or at least the general public, they feared that the Soviet Union was moving ahead of us in intercontinental ballistic missiles and all that. As it turns out, they were never close. But the end result was the same. And some will like to tell you, well, Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. The wall got tore down. Well, there was a little bit of causation there, but it was far more than that. And I believe that Reagan's policy towards the Soviet Union, displaying the highest degree of readiness, but at the same time being willing to negotiate verifiable arms control treaties, which his START treaty and the INF treaty both worked. And probably that, and I believe that it pushed Gorbachev to change his domestic policy, glasnost and perestroika. All of those are combined to basically bring an end to the Soviet threat, bring an end to at least that Cold War.